You know what's funny? Everyone thinks intelligent people avoid crowds because they're shy, or awkward, or maybe just a little bit pretentious. But that's not it at all. The real reason? It's so much darker, and so much more revealing about human nature than anyone wants to admit. See, when a highly intelligent person walks into a crowded room, something happens, something invisible. Something that most people will never notice because they're too busy playing the social game to see the game itself. And what happens is this: the crowd feels threatened, not physically, not consciously, but on a primal psychological level. Their brains light up like someone just challenged their entire existence. And here's the kicker: the intelligent person didn't even have to say anything yet. Their presence alone is enough. Welcome to the hidden war that intelligent loners fight every single time they step into a crowd. And trust me, by the end of this, you'll understand why they'd rather face anything else. Intelligence disrupts social hierarchy, and people hate that. Let's start with the big one. Human beings are hierarchical creatures. We've been organizing ourselves into pecking orders since we lived in caves. And you know what keeps those hierarchies stable? Not intelligence, not insight, not innovation. It's agreement, it's conformity. It's everyone knowing their place and staying in it. Now imagine someone walks into a group, and without even trying, without even speaking, their very presence shifts the power dynamic. Maybe it's the way they observe before they speak. Maybe it's the depth in their eyes that suggests they're seeing 3 layers deeper than everyone else. Maybe it's just the quiet confidence that comes from someone who doesn't need external validation. Whatever it is, people sense it, and their brains interpret it as a status threat. Here's what's wild. Researchers have found that when people encounter someone they perceive as more intelligent, their amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for threat detection, actually fires up. It's the same response you'd get if someone physically threatened you. So when that intelligent person finally speaks, when they offer an insight that's more nuanced, more thoughtful, more accurate than what everyone else was saying, the crowd doesn't think, "Oh, how interesting." They think, "Who the hell does this person think they are?" Because that insight just lowered everyone else's status in the room. It exposed the shallowness of their thinking. It made them look less impressive by comparison. And people don't forgive that. They can't. Their egos won't let them. So instead of engaging with the idea, instead of being curious or grateful for a fresh perspective, they do what humans have always done when their status is threatened. They attack, not with fists, but with social weapons, dismissal, mockery, changing the subject, making the intelligent person feel like they're the problem for thinking too deeply. And after enough of these encounters, the intelligent person learns crowds aren't safe spaces for real thinking. They're battlegrounds where every genuine insight is treated like an act of aggression. So they stop showing up. The Dunning-Kruger hellscape. You want to know what hell looks like for an intelligent person? It's being surrounded by people who are confidently, loudly, proudly wrong about everything, and being unable to say anything about it without becoming the villain. Welcome to the Dunning-Kruger effect in action. For those who don't know, the Dunning-Kruger effect is this beautiful psychological phenomenon, where people with the least knowledge about something are the most confident. And people who actually know what they're talking about, they're full of doubt and nuance. Now picture this scenario. You're at a party. Someone brings up a topic, let's say how the economy works. And this person, who maybe read one viral tweet or watched one YouTube video, starts holding court. They're explaining it all, confidently, incorrectly, but with so much conviction that everyone's nodding along. And you actually studied economics. You understand the complexity. You see the 50 different factors this person is ignoring, so you try to add some nuance, gently, respectfully. Well, actually, it's a bit more complicated than that because, and you know what happens? The room turns on you. Why are you being so negative? Can't you just let people have a conversation? God, you must be exhausting at parties. See, here's the thing. In a crowd, confidence beats accuracy every single time. People don't want truth. They want to feel good. They want simple explanations that make them feel smart for understanding them. They want to be part of the group that all agrees on something, even if that something is completely wrong. And when you come in with actual knowledge, with real depth, with the audacity to suggest that maybe things aren't as simple as everyone wants them to be, you're not educating them. You're threatening their comfort. You're making them feel stupid, and people will forgive you for almost anything except making them feel stupid in front of others. So the intelligent person learns pretty quickly. In crowds, you have two choices: play dumb and fit in, or be honest and get frozen out. Most of them choose option 3. Don't show up in the first place. Crowds demand cognitive conformity, or else. Here's something nobody talks about. When you're in a group, there's this invisible pressure to think like the group thinks, to see what the group sees, to reach the same conclusions the group reaches. It's called groupthink. And it's everywhere. In crowds, there's always a dominant narrative, always a consensus forming. And once that consensus takes shape, once the group has collectively decided what the right opinion is, anyone who deviates from it becomes a problem, not a person with a different perspective, not someone offering a fresh angle, a problem. And here's where intelligent people get screwed. They can't help but deviate. Their brains don't work on autopilot. They don't just absorb the group's opinion and regurgitate it with a smile. They analyze. They question. They see holes in the logic. They consider alternative explanations. And when they voice those alternatives, the group doesn't welcome it as intellectual diversity. They experience it as betrayal. Because in a crowd, agreement equals safety. Agreement means we're all on the same team. Agreement reinforces the social bonds that hold the group together. Disagreement? Disagreement threatens all of that. So when the intelligent person says, "But what if we're wrong about this?" or "Have you considered that maybe?" the crowd doesn't hear a question. They hear an attack. It forces people to confront the fact that maybe they've been going along with the group, not because the group is right, but because going along is easier than thinking critically. And most people? They really don't want to confront that, so they shoot the messenger instead. The sensory overload. Let's talk about something that sounds almost physical. When a highly intelligent person walks into a crowded space, their brain doesn't just process the obvious stuff, the conversations, the music, the visual chaos. It processes everything, every micro-expression, every tone shift, every subtle power dynamic playing out in real time, every contradiction between what people are saying and what their body language reveals, every pattern, every anomaly. It's like their brain is running 100 different programs simultaneously, all feeding data into their conscious awareness. And you know what that feels like? Drowning. While everyone else is having a great time riding the wave of social energy, chatting and laughing and vibing, the intelligent person's nervous system is in overdrive. Their brain is screaming at them with information they can't shut off. They're picking up on tensions nobody else notices. They're seeing through social performances that everyone else is buying completely. They're 3 steps ahead in every conversation, predicting where it's going to go, and already exhausted by the predictability of it. And the noise. My God, the noise. Not just the literal volume, though that's bad enough, but the cognitive noise. The mental clutter. The constant barrage of stimuli that their brain insists on analyzing, because that's what their brain does. Most people can filter. They can tune out the irrelevant stuff and focus on the conversation in front of them. Intelligent people often can't. Or they can, but it takes so much effort that within an hour they're completely drained. And here's the part that makes it worse. Nobody gets it. Just relax. Stop overthinking. You're being too sensitive, but they're not being sensitive. Their brain is just wired to process more information, make more connections, see more layers. It's like asking someone with supersonic hearing to just ignore the sound of a jet engine. They can't. It's not a choice. It's how their system works. So crowds aren't just uncomfortable for intelligent people. They're physically, neurologically overwhelming. And the only way to recover? To shut it all off and retreat into silence. Not because they hate people, but because their nervous system literally needs the reset. Emotional labor that's never reciprocated. Here's something that will piss you off once you notice it. In social settings, intelligent people are constantly doing emotional labor for others, constantly reading the room, constantly adjusting their communication style to match whoever they're talking to, constantly dumbing down their thoughts, softening their insights, making themselves smaller so others feel comfortable. It's exhausting work, and it's completely one-sided. Because you know what happens when an intelligent person needs that same accommodation. When they need someone to meet them at their level, to engage with their ideas, to actually think deeply with them. Nobody does it. Instead, they get blank stares. They get people checking their phones. They get the conversational equivalent of a pat on the head. "That's nice, buddy," before someone changes the subject back to something superficial. The message is clear. We expect you to come down to our level, but don't you dare expect us to rise to yours. And that's the contract in crowds. You can participate, but only if you make yourself digestible. Only if you translate your complexity into simplicity. Only if you perform the version of yourself that makes everyone else comfortable. But who's making you comfortable? Who's putting in the effort to understand you? Nobody. Because in a crowd, the expectation is that everyone meets at the lowest common denominator. And if you're capable of more than that, if you need more than that, that's your problem, not theirs. So the intelligent person sits there doing all this emotional labor, code switching between their actual thoughts and what's socially acceptable to say, and getting nothing in return. No. Intellectual stimulation, no genuine connection, no sense that anyone actually gives a damn about who they really are beneath the performance. And after enough of that, they stop showing up, because why would you keep volunteering for a one-sided relationship where you're expected to give everything and receive nothing? You wouldn't, and they don't. Crowds worship superficiality and punish depth. Let's be brutally honest about what conversations look like in crowds. Surface, level, bullshit, who's dating who, what everyone's watching on Netflix, the weather, work gossip, sports. Surface-level observations about surface-level topics that require zero intellectual engagement. And you know what? That's fine. Sometimes people just want to chat. Sometimes small talk serves a social function. But here's the problem. In crowds, that's all there is. Try to go deeper. Try to steer a conversation towards something meaningful, something philosophical, something that actually makes people think, and watch what happens. Discomfort. Awkwardness. Someone making a joke to break the tension. The conversation getting steered right back to safe, shallow waters. Because depth is dangerous in crowds. Depth requires vulnerability. Depth requires admitting you don't have all the answers. Depth requires engaging with complexity and sitting with uncertainty. And most people would rather die than do that in front of a group. So they keep it light, they keep it fun, they keep it meaningless. And for the intelligent person who lives for depth, who craves conversations that actually go somewhere, who needs intellectual stimulation like other people need air, it's torture. It's like being invited to a feast and being served cardboard. It's like showing up for a concert and getting elevator music. The intelligent person sits there starving for real connection, real ideas, real engagement. And all they get is small talk and surface-level observations. So the intelligent person learns, if you want real conversations, you're not going to find them in crowds. You're going to find them in one-on-one settings with the rare people who are capable of going there with you. And everywhere else, it's just noise. Crowds operate on collective intelligence, which is always lower than individual intelligence. Here's something that'll blow your mind. When people form a crowd, something bizarre happens to their cognitive abilities. They don't add up, they average out. And that average? It's always dragged down to the lowest common denominator. There's actual research on this. It's called collective intelligence, and while it sounds impressive, here's what it really means. A group's problem-solving ability is limited by its Least capable members. Think about that for a second. You could have 5 brilliant people in a room, but if the 6th person doesn't get it, can't keep up, or feels threatened by complexity, the entire group has to slow down. Simplify. Dumb it down, because groups make decisions by consensus, and consensus requires everyone to be on board. And getting everyone on board means reducing everything to the level that the slowest thinker can grasp. Now imagine you're the intelligent person in that room. You can see the solution. It's crystal clear to you. You can see how all the pieces fit together, how the logic flows, how the problem can be solved in 3 elegant steps. But when you try to explain it to the group, one person doesn't understand step 2. Another person gets confused by the terminology. A third person feels intimidated by the complexity and shuts down. So what happens? The group doesn't rise to meet your intelligence. You get dragged down to meet theirs. Your elegant 3-step solution gets chopped up, simplified, watered down until it's barely recognizable. And by the time the group agrees on something, that's not even a good solution anymore. It's just the solution that everyone could understand. But here's where it gets really messed up. The group then congratulates itself for collaborating, for working together, for valuing everyone's input, when what really happened is that the intelligence in the room got systematically suppressed to make the less intelligent people feel included. And the intelligent person? They're sitting there watching a perfectly good idea get destroyed in real time. And they can't say anything about it without looking like an arrogant asshole. Because the moment you suggest that maybe, just maybe, the group's collective thinking is producing worse results than if one person just solved it alone, you've violated the sacred rule of crowds. Everyone's contribution is equally valuable. Except it's not. It never was. But crowds can't admit that without fracturing, so they maintain the fiction. They pretend that group decisions are inherently better than individual ones. They tell themselves that 2 heads are better than 1. But the intelligent person knows the truth. 2 heads are only better than 1 if the second head is actually adding something valuable. If it's just slowing down the first head, making it explain basic concepts, forcing it to compromise on quality for the sake of inclusivity, then 2 heads aren't better than 1. They're worse. And this is why intelligent people hate group projects, hate committee decisions, hate any situation where their thinking has to be filtered through the cognitive limitations of others, because they're not learning from the group. They're not being challenged by the group. They're not getting better ideas from the group. They're being handicapped by it. And after years of watching their insights get dumbed down, watered down, and ultimately ignored in favor of whatever the group can collectively understand, they stop participating, not because they think they're better than everyone else, but because they've realized that crowds actively make them worse. They make them slower, less creative, less effective, and the intelligent person would rather work alone and produce something excellent than work with a group and produce something mediocre, because crowds don't elevate intelligence, they suffocate it. Crowds run on shared emotional states, and intelligence disrupts the flow. Here's something wild that nobody talks about. When people gather in crowds, something happens on a neurological level. Their brains start syncing up. They begin operating on the same emotional wavelength. It's called emotional contagion, and it's powerful. You've seen it happen. Someone starts laughing at a party and suddenly everyone's laughing. Someone gets angry in a meeting and the tension spreads through the room like wildfire. Someone's excited about something, and that energy becomes infectious. This synchronization is what makes crowds feel alive. It's what creates that sense of connection, of being part of something bigger than yourself. And most people, they love it. They crave it. It's why concerts feel electric, why sports stadiums buzz with energy, why protests can feel so powerful. But here's the problem for intelligent people. Their brains don't sync up the same way. Not because they're cold or emotionless, but because they're processing on a different level. While everyone else is riding the emotional wave, the intelligent person's brain is doing something else entirely. It's analyzing. It's observing. It's noticing the patterns behind the emotion instead of just feeling the emotion itself. They're watching the crowd get excited about something and simultaneously noticing that the thing everyone's excited about doesn't actually make logical sense, or that the shared anger is based on incomplete information, or that the collective enthusiasm is being manipulated by someone who knows exactly which emotional buttons to push. And that awareness, it creates distance. The intelligent person can't fully surrender to the shared emotional state because part of their brain is always standing outside of it, examining it, questioning it. And the crowd can feel that distance. They can sense when someone's not fully with them emotionally, when someone's energy isn't matching the room's energy, when someone's holding back instead of diving in, and it bothers them a lot. So the intelligent person becomes the outsider, the killjoy, the person who doesn't know how to have fun, when really they're just wired to observe emotions rather than be consumed by them. And in a crowd where everyone's running on synchronized feelings, that makes them incompatible with the entire experience. Crowds force performance, while loners need authenticity to function. Here's something that cuts to the bone. Intelligent loners don't just prefer authenticity, they require it to mentally function. Their brains literally can't operate at full capacity when they're performing a social role, when they're pretending, when they're code switching to fit in. It's not a preference. It's a cognitive necessity. See, most people can compartmentalize. They have their work self and their home self and their social self, and they can switch between these versions without it costing them anything. It's seamless, natural, easy, but for the intelligent loner, that switching comes at a massive cognitive cost because their intelligence isn't separate from their personality. It's not something they can turn on and off. Their way of thinking, their way of processing information, their natural curiosity and depth, it's who they are at a fundamental level. And crowds demand they hide that, not explicitly. Nobody says, please be less yourself. But the pressure is there, constant and suffocating. And every minute they spend performing this false version of themselves, their actual cognitive abilities diminish. Their creativity shuts down. Their problem-solving ability dulls. Their mental clarity gets foggy. It's like their brain goes into power-saving mode because it's spending all its resources on maintaining the performance instead of actually thinking. And here's the thing that makes it unbearable, for they can feel it happening. They can feel themselves getting stupider in real time, feel their thoughts becoming more sluggish, more surface level, more ordinary. And for someone whose intelligence is their primary way of interfacing with the world, whose clarity of thought is their anchor, their compass, their sense of self, that feeling is terrifying. It's like watching yourself disappear while you're still conscious, so they escape to solitude. Not because they're unsocial, but because solitude is the only place where they can be completely authentic, and authenticity is the only state where their brain can function properly. When they're alone, they don't have to perform. They don't have to code switch. They don't have to suppress or simplify or pretend. They can think at full speed, follow ideas wherever they lead, ask themselves the hard questions, explore complexity without apology. And in that state of complete authenticity, their intelligence comes back online. Their creativity flows, their mental clarity returns. That's not loneliness. That's restoration. That's their brain finally being allowed to work the way it was designed to work. And once they've experienced that, once they've felt the difference between performing in crowds and being authentic in solitude, there's no going back. Because they've learned that crowds don't just drain their social energy, they drain their cognitive capacity, they make them less intelligent, less creative, less themselves, and no amount of social connection is worth that price. Not when solitude offers something crowds never can, the freedom to be completely, unapologetically themselves, and the cognitive clarity that comes with it. One-on-one is where real connection lives. Here's the thing that confuses people most about intelligent loners. They can't stand crowds. But put them in a one-on-one conversation with someone who actually gets it, someone who thinks deeply, someone who asks real questions, someone who doesn't need everything explained in simple terms. Suddenly, they're the most engaged, most present, most social person you've ever met. Because the problem was never about people. It was about depth. In a crowd, conversations are inherently shallow. They have to be. You can't have 20 people engaging in a deep philosophical discussion about the nature of consciousness while standing around holding drinks. So everyone defaults to small talk, to safe topics, to surface-level exchanges that don't risk making anyone uncomfortable. And for an intelligent person, that's like trying to survive on a diet of cotton candy. It's sweet, it's pleasant, but there's no substance, no nutrition, nothing that actually satisfies. But in a one-on-one conversation, everything changes. The pressure's off. There's no crowd to perform for, no consensus to maintain, no social hierarchy to navigate. It's just two people exploring ideas together. Going deep, getting vulnerable, actually thinking instead of just talking. And that's where intelligent loners come alive, because that's what they've been craving all along. Not less social interaction, but more meaningful social interaction. They'd rather have 1 3-hour conversation with someone who challenges them intellectually than 100 3-minute exchanges with people who are just filling the air with noise. Quality over quantity. Depth over breadth. And the beautiful irony? The thing that makes them seem unsocial in crowds is the exact same thing that makes them incredible companions one-on-one. Their intensity, their depth, their refusal to engage in meaningless chatter, those aren't bugs, they're features. But crowds can't appreciate those features. Crowds need simplicity. Crowds need conformity. So intelligent loners choose their battles. They save their energy for the people and spaces where their depth is valued, not punished. And everywhere else, they stay home. So why do highly intelligent loners can't stand crowds? Because crowds are designed to crush them, not consciously, not deliberately, but systematically, through the rejection of their insights, the punishment of their depth, the exhaustion of their suppression, and the hostility of environments that reward conformity over intelligence. Crowds don't want thinkers. They want participants and intelligent loners. They're not participants, they're observers, analysts, truth seekers, and that makes them incompatible with the crowd's purpose. So they choose solitude, not out of weakness but out of wisdom, because they've learned that their mental clarity, their intellectual freedom, their ability to think deeply and independently, it's worth more than any crowd's approval. They've learned that being alone is better than being surrounded by people who make you feel alone anyway. And they've learned that the real tragedy isn't their isolation, it's that the crowd will never know what they missed. If you've ever felt like the outsider in a room full of people, if you've ever had to dumb yourself down just to fit in, if you've ever chosen to stay home rather than perform another exhausting social charade, know that you are not the problem. And drop a comment below. Which reason resonated with you most? Let's talk about it, because the more we understand this dynamic, the less power it has over us.